life!
Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show. A bit late today, but we're finally here. So say hello, Lex.
Hello, people.
Say hello, Joshua.
Hey guys.
And today's player Q&A, and we have with us Zaide from Faceless. Say hello, man.
Hey, how's it going?
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your gaming background?
All right. Well, I guess first I should just really quickly apologize for the technical difficulties we ran into. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's my fault. We're late. It's not their fault. But yeah, so my gaming background. Well, in 1999, I started playing EQ. I was only eight years old back then, so I was a little tiny kid, and I sucked at EQ. Kind of still do suck. But anyway, I played very casually for a long time. I left around Omens of War, so that was probably like closer to 2004-ish. And then I kind of forgot about EQ, grew up, and many years later, I heard about a progression server that had happened already, which was Combine and Sleeper. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I hope they do another one someday so I can get in on that. And lo and behold, a couple months later, they were doing Fippy. So I was really interested, and I just came back to EQ fresh, logged in. I couldn't get into Fippy, so they made the overflow server Bulak. I logged in, and knowing nothing about EQ and not having played in almost like 10 years, never having raided, I was just like, I'm going to make a guild, and it's going to be the best guild ever. So I just kind of went with that, having no idea sort of what that would entail, in EQ especially. So, of course, my guild got stomped within like the first 8 months of the server. We played and we competed and everything, but ultimately we didn't succeed there. So rather than just kind of like give up and not play, I took the guild to the test server. And we did progression kind of at our own pace there. We tried to keep it as enforced as we could with like normal TLP style rules. And we did classic through about House of Fools. So that's something like 18 expansions of EQ. It was a lot of content that we did over a couple of years. And my plan always had been that eventually they would do a third set of progression servers. And I would come back. Oh, hello, little baby. I would
that was only awkward. Oh, hello, little baby.
You know, this changed so much.
Yeah, I know. Someone cast shrink on him. But sorry, please continue.
Sorry
anyway,
about that interruption.
Oh, it's okay. So I tasted defeat my first time around, and then I really wanted to come back and try it again. So we did the test guild as a way to keep everyone active in the meantime. And I wanted to try to build connections and just get kind of a reputation for at least being able to do the content. So I learned a lot in that experience. They announced Ragefire and Lockjaw. Well, they announced Ragefire. They're like, hey, we're going to do this new server. It's going to be Ragefire. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Everybody wanted to do it. But when they put the dates out, at the time I was on like a rotating wash floor kind of work schedule. And I was like, there's no way I can get this time off. So we ended up making like kind of I guess it was a casual guild. I wasn't even really a part of it. I wasn't going to be able to like lead it at that time on Ragefire. But like 5 days later, they announced that they were going to do Lockjaw. And the days that it was opening up did work for me. I was able to get my leave dates in for that. So if you know nothing about TLP, what you should know is that the first 5 days of a server launch pretty much decide the fate of that server forever. So we played there. We all had time off. We did what we did. The rest is kind of history. We got all the server firsts and stuff on that server. Well, some of them ended up being the top guild there as Faceless Insanity, which is still going right now. It's led by my buddy Selenius. And then we took a break there. Well, I took a break from there. It's still going. I think they're in Omens of War getting ready for Dragons of Norath now. And later on they announced Agnar. And I decided again that I played there. So we made a guild, kind of did the same thing. Right now, Agnar is wrapping up. It's in Luckland, soon to be in Pop. And I think at this stage, I've accomplished pretty much everything I wanted to do in EQ. All my like little goals, things that would be neat to try, we did. So that's kind of like my gaming history in a nutshell. And now I'm just really looking forward to capturing that nostalgia in a new way with Pantheon.
Yeah,
awesome.
Nice.
So when you're playing, do you prefer to play With your real life friends or with online friends?
It's hard to say because I've played with the same group of like 100 people for so long now that they are real friends. And in fact, some of the Faceless guys, we like live together now. Well, we don't live together, but we're pretty much neighbors. So we've got like 4 or 5 guys here that when we're playing games, we can all go over one house and just play together. So if we do a static group or something like that, it's really easy to do that grind. But you know, I guess I'd say I do enjoy playing like in person with people more, just because of that human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of my friends in game are now my real life friends.
Which is how it should progress, to be honest, in a perfect world. So, how long do you typically spend creating your character when you're starting a new MMO?
The least amount of time possible.
Just click, go.
Yes.
Well, there's actually someone out there that is not incredibly vain. Imagine that. So, if you had a choice of starting in a new starting area or a single area where all new characters spawn, which would you choose and why?
So, I definitely think I would go with the new starting area. I assume that kind of means like would you have like different starting areas for each race versus a singular? Yeah. So I understand why companies do the singular thing, right? Because you don't know how your population is going to be, and it's really expensive.
Yeah, it's kind of more inclusive, really easier to get caught up to your friends.
Right, exactly. But I want to be immersed, and part of the immersion is having factions and races in the world that maybe don't get along, and so that it wouldn't make sense for them to live together.
Yeah.
And also, I think the idea of having all these different starting routes, it adds a tactical element to how you start off, and it's kind of like that meta game that I really like to. I like to map out gameplay routes of how we're going to meet up and where we're going to go.
Yeah. So that's probably my preference. I prefer the different starting areas because not only for alts that it makes the gameplay different for you.
Yeah.
It makes your gameplay interesting, like trying to meet up with your friends and you have to go through Blackborough. That's an ordeal.
It also makes sense that societies will create their own space. They won't all just be lumped together. So yeah, I think so. So then what class and race are you typically drawn to when selecting your character to play?
I would say I typically like I like classes that have a get out of jail free card. Like casters usually have a gate, which is nice, but I always really like monks because they have feign death, right? And it lets me just be like, okay, well the raid is wiping right now, or my group's wiping, but I'm gonna be over here. It's gonna be all right. So I like that kind of like I guess it's a support role. I like being able to control the flow and pace of combat relatively easily by pulling. I like all that stuff. I'd never play a tank. I would never play a healer because I wouldn't want that kind of pressure on me. If you mess up, you're just like, man, it's all my fault and I suck.
Somebody that finally respects the role of tanks and healers.
I know. How about that?
Mm-hmm. See, somebody understands what it's like, the pressure, the hard work behind a healer and a tank.
Obviously, I don't know about healer, but I know tank for sure.
Hey.
Tanks.
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, like, leading a raid is hard enough. I wouldn't want to also have to tank the raid. I can't, I've had a lot of members in my guilds who have actually done that, but I don't need them in that position.
Yeah, it is tough. So, which starting area are you most excited to see and why?
Throne Fast.
Throne Fast.
I just have a feeling it's going to be great.
Yeah, it looks massive.
No, so outside of Throne Fast, probably, I had the understanding that maybe the gnomes have like a floating city. I think that conceptually is pretty cool, and I'd love to see it pulled off. So I'm interested in that. Also, the gnomes just look incredible. So I don't know why you wouldn't want to check out their starting city, see what that culture is kind of like.
I mean, that's actually almost a trick question because with a little bit of twist to almost every race, all these like starting cities and areas are probably going to be very visually pleasing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I definitely think they're all going to be worth checking out, minus the Dark Mirror. But everybody
you say Scarred.
Right. So, something totally different. So what is the best movie you've ever watched, and why?
Oh, that's easy. That's definitely Goodfellas.
Okay, Goodfellas. And why, though?
I mean, honestly, I don't know that it needs any explanation. Anyone who's seen Goodfellas, they probably know, right? Like, as far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a gangster.
Gangster. There we go.
That's amazing.
So, will you be getting a new system for Pantheon?
Well, I did, and it was working great until this interview, so we'll see. No, so my system right now that I just got a couple months ago, it's a 1080 Ti Coffee Lake processor, so it's kind of got the works, and I really enjoy it, and I hope that by the time Pantheon comes out, it's still pretty good.
So, what are your thoughts on like character movement within a game, and more specifically, Pantheon? How do you think movement should be handled?
You skipped the question, Lex.
It's a duplicate.
No.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
I've got what class and race are you typically drawn to when selecting your character?
And look up 4.
Oh my word, Lex! Fix your.
Oh my God! I was doing my job and I get called out on it.
Fix your bot. Okay.
God. Please.
Right, back to the question.
Okay, back to the question.
What was the question again? Sorry.
There we go.
What are your thoughts on movement within the game? More specifically, how do you think like character movement should be handled in Pantheon?
Right. So movement, I mean, it's extremely pivotal, right? It's kind of the underlying foundation of everything you do. So if the movement sucks, nothing else in the game is going to really flow or feel natural. So I definitely think movement needs to be fluid. It needs to feel good. There needs to be movement options. Like there has to be a way to become faster or become encumbered and you move slower. Everything that goes into the immersion, the realism of the game is linked into your movement and how you move. Now from the streams, I can tell you already that it looks like movement's pretty good, and especially with the climbing system, how they were jumping around in Amber Fate. I really enjoyed that. And I think that there's a lot of great potential to make use of that in a way that we haven't really seen in MMOs too much.
Yeah, and that's pre-alpha, so there's a lot of changes to come to that anyway. And also, your main pre-alpha, yeah, and also that's the butt you're going to be staring at for your whole playing existence. Yeah. So you better make sure that character moves properly.
Oh yeah. Now, I just gotta ask though, does it really bug you when a character's feet slide? I mean, that's like my #1 pet peeve in MMOs.
I think I try not to get caught up in the aesthetics too much.
I try not to, but I always end up seeing it. Your character's foot goes down and then it slides, and I'm just like,
as long as it doesn't like pull me out of the moment, then I'll be all right. But if it's something that I'm constantly doing, then it would be like borderline unplayable, I suppose. Yeah, exactly. But I think the movement is kind of in a lot of ways it's what separates pretty talented players from your sub-average or your average player. Like a really good player will be able to manipulate the movement in such a way that they'll navigate around mobs or traps or issues without getting aggro. They won't get lost in areas. Just there's a lot of nuance, I think, to movement that people don't really give it credit for.
Yeah, true. So what is your least favorite class and race in the game, do you think?
Man, it's hard to say that I have a least favorite class because I really recognize how important they all are. But in terms of the one I would least like to play, it would definitely be Enchanter. For whatever reason, Enchanter has just never really appealed to me. Its toolkit isn't something I really like. I don't know. Yeah, that's just it. Generally, I stay away from casters in most games anyway. But the Enchanter in particular, I think it's the fact that they're like pure support and they lack any kind of like real DPS opportunities in most games where they appear.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're probably gonna have like Charm or something, which will probably be really powerful. But I'd like a way for my character itself to do some sort of good damage.
Okay, nice. And race-wise, what do you think?
Well, definitely. Well, so I think Dark Mirror are gonna be like the Dark Elf of EQ, where everyone plays a Dark Mirror. So I think it's gonna be a little oversold. But in terms of appearance, and I'm sorry, I definitely dislike the Scar. Their hands just look so dumb. Look at their hands. I hope that in the
Man,
game...
you make me 15 minutes late. Now you're ragging on my scar. I don't know.
Like,
I don't know, man.
they've got these little Whopper Jr. hands. They need better hands.
There are aspects that need to be rectified when they hit the modeling process.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope they do. I believe they will.
Oh, I do too. Which is why I don't go and the hands do bug me as well, because it's just like three little prongs are like, arr!
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that's going to be addressed.
Yep.
Like a lot of things.
So you want to take the next one?
Yep. What is your number one thing from the Pantheon difference that you want to see in-game most?
You know, I looked at the list of, like, quote, the Pantheon difference, and I don't know that there's any one thing there that I care about too much. I really just want to have a community and group-focused game again. And I feel like most MMOs kind of get away from that. So hearing Brad and hearing Chris and Tim talk about those elements is really what pulls me in. I know that they know how to make the kind of game that I want to play. And so I just want to play the game that they envision. I want to see them create whatever it is they're going to create, and that's the game I want to play.
Yeah. Nice.
So, what gaming cliches kind of annoy you the most, and how do you think that you would try to prevent them in Pantheon?
I think my biggest annoyance with games is when they kind of they inundate you with a bunch of like easy data. So like maps, quest markers, little icons over NPCs' heads that tell you where to go and what to do. Like, hey, this NPC is linked to that NPC, so when you engage them, they're going to come together, and you automatically know that. I really think that the world should be done in such a way that you discover those things, and there should be natural kind of cues, I suppose, just like there would be in real life. You'd have to like really observe and kind of use your experience and judgment to make those kind of calls. Basically, I guess in a nutshell, I want to have only information that would be available to my character. And the only exception to that is like about my character itself. Like I should be able to like pull up my inventory and see my health, right? Because that's my own body, I suppose. But about the world, I only want to know what my character would know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. So, yeah, you've spoken about the tank, the healer, that you're not really a fan of, or a mezza, definitely. So you got DPS, dealing with ranged or close-up DPS. What is your preference then?
Excuse me.
I'll take a little bit of both. I enjoy the finer aspects of like a ranged DPS, trying to like navigate mobs around areas while you're kiting them, that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of depth to that and a lot of nuance again. Melee DPS, when you're up close, it tends to be just, you know, like stand behind the mob and punch it, right? But, you know, DPS is typically pretty easy, so I like it because the other jobs are way harder. I don't want to have to, like, you know, I don't want it to be on me when we lose.
Yeah. So, what would you look forward to the most in Pantheon if virtual reality was a part of it?
I honestly don't know if I could handle Pantheon in VR. Like I'm gonna be addicted enough just because it's an MMO, right? Like if they had VR, then I'll like starve to death.
You walk in Amber Fate and everyone's like, "What are you doing?" You're just standing there.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I guess just VR would add that element of immersiveness, and I think that is like one of the core things we always want to strive for. Is we want to. It should be like an escapist kind of thing. You want to be sucked into the gameplay and really feel like you are the hero.
Nice. So which do you enjoy more? Raiding, exploring, grouping, or crafting? And if so, why?
That's a really tough one for me. Right off the bat, I can just take crafting off. It's not something I particularly enjoy in games usually, though I understand it's important. But I really love grouping, especially with a group of my pals. We can just kind of relax and have fun for a night. I'm a huge nerd, a huge lore nerd especially. So I love exploring. Like I'll be that guy who's in the zone like staring at the wall, trying to like make out the symbols and be like, I wonder if there's like a real meaning behind these hieroglyphs that like some artist made up. So I enjoy exploring in that kind of element. And then of course,
great.
I do love raiding, and I think that raiding is kind of the pinnacle of what you do in that kind of world, because it involves orchestrating huge of people and stuff. It's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like a real battle in the sense that you have masses of people interacting. So I really love everything except for crafting.
Okay, nice.
Cool. So
if I had to pick one thing though,
yeah,
I think a game could stand on its own with just exploring. I don't think a game only about raiding would be successful. I don't think a game only about grouping and like Guck, you know, just killing frogs all day would be successful in the long term. But I think a game where you were just trying to explore and uncover mysteries about the world, I think that could stand on its own. So I think it's probably the most important of the three.
Yeah. Cool.
Nice.
So before the next question, for people out there that, you know, might be guild hunting or want to know more about your guild, what could you tell them?
You know, we're just we're pretty casual. No, so Faceless is a guild that has existed primarily in EverQuest. We kind of represent, I would say we represent probably the 1% of like what hardcore raiding is like. When expansions or games or servers launch, we look for our members to have time off of work and play for 30, 60, 72 hours straight, or sleep in shifts where you do like 3 hours to 4 hours of sleep and come back and play again until you hit max level. We're really trying to push the edge. In fact, I would say the easiest way to look at it is if you were trying to speed run an MMO, that is our philosophy. That's our vision. We want to do it as fast as it can be done. You know, I enjoy competing with other raid forces. That's nice. But really my thing is I want to clear content faster than it's ever been cleared before. I don't think it's great. I don't think like, wow, I'm so cool, or like, you know, Faceless is amazing because we do that and we've been successful. It's just something that's fun and enjoyable to do. And I think when you put those goals, you see everybody kind of perform at a higher level because they're really trying their best to clear the content as fast as possible. So that's kind of what we're like. In terms of me as a guild leader, I think my leadership philosophy is kind of like servant leadership. I believe that when you advertise your guild, right, you are selling an experience, right? Because when people look for guilds, they're looking for a guild that's going to deliver them something. So I say, hey, this is what Faceless or any other guild is going to give to you. Then I feel like a personal obligation to deliver that experience to those people who basically put their faith in you to, you know, you said you were going to do something. So I really believe in like that kind of follow through and trying to do whatever I can to ensure that my members get the experience that they signed up for. And so that's kind of what Faceless is about. If you are interested in clearing content as fast as possible, then I think that this is where you want to be.
Cool.
Just got to make sure to bring your A game. B game will not cut it.
Yep. So, if you could copy a character creation section out of any other game and add it to Pantheon, which game would it come from and why?
Oh, this is a fun question, and I'm gonna kind of like hijack this question to talk about something sort of related. So I think I would take EQ, just because obviously it's like the one I'm most familiar with. I think it's pretty simple, cut and dry, and really most MMO character creations are pretty simple. So yeah, I think that's what I would go with. But here's the thing. Looking at the Pantheon streams, we've seen that characters have stats of like 8 through 12, maybe for starting around there, or at least the characters we've seen in game when they play have had stats in that kind of range. They're very low. In games like EQ, your starting stats are like 80 to 120. So what this makes me think of is like in EQ, if I get a sword that has +1 strength, and I've got 100 strength, well, I mean, that's like a 1% increase on my total strength score. It's not a big deal. Yeah. But in Pantheon, if I get a sword that has +1 strength, that's like a 10% increase in my character's total strength score from a single item, and it's got the smallest benefit it could possibly have. So it does this weird thing where gear, it seems like gear would be extremely powerful relative to some other games.
Yeah.
And I think that like if we actually want to have small numbers, because I think that is the design philosophy, is to have like relatively modest numbers on the screen. You don't want like WoW, where it's like, you know, you hit for 10 billion damage, right? I think that you have a really high base stat, like 100, and the way the damage formula works out is that even having 100 strength results in doing like 1 or 2 or 3 damage, and then it lets you really fine tune where the player power gets, based on items, based on character creation, based on buffs. So if you know that this item, or all these items are going to give you like a total of 10% combined, it's a lot. There's a lot more flexibility for the devs, basically.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of smaller numbers, because in my personal philosophy, it's smaller numbers means that the stats actually matter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, the power, though, they have to obviously avoid the power creep over years, because that's where a lot of these MMOs fail. It becomes useless after a while.
Yep, exactly.
Or they jump too high. Burning Crusade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's a rant for another day.
exactly.
Coming soon to a show on the VoT.
So fast forward 3 years. What do you imagine Pantheon to have evolved into?
Man, I hope it's a really thriving, popular community of gamers who want a game that challenges them in whatever way it is that they seek challenge. I don't want any part of it to be just like a trivial click this, get that situation. I want players to feel like every single thing on their character they have earned through hard work. I want them to feel like they have forged real friendships because of the difficulty in what they did, right? If you hit Dungeon Finder and you queue up with a bunch of people you've never met and you clear a dungeon in 30 minutes, you didn't make friends, you didn't make a memory, and you didn't get anything you actually care about. But if you get a cool group and you're going for hours and you finally get to the end of like this dungeon and you get that really cool sword that isn't just like a +1, but it's got flavor to it, then I think you've had like a valuable experience, you've made friends, and you're going to remember that item. I think a lot of us can remember items from EQ because they're like that. Like, who doesn't remember the flowing black silk sash from Lord Guck? I think most veteran EQ players know that item. And
that was worth some good money.
Yeah, and you remember a bunch of the times that you died trying to get to camps like that. So I think we just need to challenge players to create a rewarding experience. If you give them something easy, it might give them that quick hit of endorphins. It might give them that nice rush in the moment, but it's not going to give them something that they're going to look back on and say, that was an amazing experience.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think of third-party apps linked to Pantheon to improve the game? i.e. setcraft outside of the game, or DKP programs that use in-game data?
I guess it depends on really what the app's going to do. I really enjoy. So I guess the foundation, right? I think there should be a log file. I think that Pantheon should make sure that there is some kind of document that captures all text which appears on your screen. Because that's how you're going to get parsing information for DPS meters, which I think you should have. Now, I don't know about like a meter that overlays onto your screen, because I like minimalistic UIs, but you should be able to look back in encounters and say, why did we fail? Was it because this person didn't pull their weight? Was it because every 10 seconds the mob does this, and you'll be able to break that out by looking at a log? I mean, if they don't give you a log file, people are going to record it and just do it like frame by frame. So at least save us the trouble, give us a log file so we can parse it ourselves with scripts. As far as DKP, yeah, definitely. I'll do anything to automate DKP because 1, I hate it, and 2, it's always a nightmare to handle. We always have like every guild has a DKP officer if you use a DKP system. And man, I feel bad for those guys. That is a thankless, difficult, and tedious job.
Yeah.
In terms of like a lot of other things, I think that's actually where my interest in third-party applications ends. I'd like DKP would be great, and parsing a log file for DPS would be great, and that's kind of it. I don't like text overlays. I don't like anything that takes us out of the immersive experience.
Nice.
So this is actually a pretty interesting question as well, because this is something we hope that's going to happen soon. Would you attend a Pantheon type event? And how far would you travel to get there? And what would get you there?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to go to any kind of like Pantheon event, any group-oriented event with the community or with the developers or Visionary Realms in general. That would be fantastic. As for how far I would travel, it's more like how much would I spend to get there. Like
Shut up and take my money.
Right now I'm in Japan, and I'd love to go to like PAX East and see the team, but is it worth $2,000 to go see them for an afternoon? Probably not. So it's just a matter of that aspect. But yeah, I would love to go, and once I'm back living in the States, I'm sure I'll attend them as frequently as I can.
Yeah.
Yep. I just hope to have them over here in Europe. I'd even.
Hey, I told.
Go on.
I told Brad he can come over to Japan. We'll have a party. It's fine.
Yeah.
With a bit of sake.
I'd even come over and visit you, Josh, if they had a Pantheon in the UK.
Yeah, that would be great.
So VR, if you're watching, I'll actually go the distance. I'll go and visit Josh in the UK, go to attempt a Pantheon, and he'll do the same and come to Germany.
Yep.
So there you go.
Bit of Brackpost.
If it's more than 2 states away, I ain't going.
All right, so here's the most important question of all. Who is the VoT host with the most?
Oh no, the pressure's on. So, I originally told Yarnilla my answer to this question. He said, "Don't spoil it." So now I have to change it, right? I feel like I got to change it. So I'm gonna go with Joshu.
Yeah.
He's finally out.
He's
finally go on.
You've now been broken. You've now been broken in. You are now officially a part of the VoT show. You've now actually passed the threshold. You've got to vote. You're in. There's no getting out.
And since we added on the website an actual chart that's going to end up tracking these a little more accurately, this just means that Josh just pulled ahead of Yarn.
Oh yeah.
Because I checked it this morning.
Very nice.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So, Zaide, if you could say anything to Visionary Realms, what would it be?
Wow. I mean, I probably bother them too much. I'm always like trying to get additional details and then just like shut up. But if I could say anything, I would really just say that I really think that they're doing a great job, and I think that most of the players, the silent majority, really just want to play the game that they want to make. I know they get inundated with ideas and like good idea fairy situations, like, oh man, it'd be so cool if we could do this. I really just want to see that. Yeah, I really just want to see them make the game that they want to make, and I think most of us do too. And I know there's some very vocal doubters out there on the internet and everything, but I think even the doubters want to see it succeed. They're just jaded. So keep doing what you're doing. We love the hard work. I know they're doing an amazing job, and we're all happy to be along for the ride.
Oh, nice. And that brings us to the end of today's show. Next Friday we will be theory crafting, classes. This will be a series actually of shows that we will be doing. We're going to actually look at the class philosophy from MMOs, how it's generally approached with the archetype class and then your subtype class. And we're actually going to try and explore and see if we can find ways to update the system, add a nice twist to how you would interact with those types of systems, and actually try and see if we can create some really cool archetype and subclasses along the line with what VR are planning to release based on their classes. So that will be a series, and we'll be kicking that off next Friday. So
looking forward to it.
Yep, definitely going to be a really good show. Zaide, thanks again for doing this.
Thank you.
Despite actually, we're not going to blame Zaide for the technical difficulties here. Okay, let's go and step back to actually Monday. On Monday,
so I was sitting there thinking, oh god, he's going to blame me.
On Monday, we had our dev Q&A, and for some unknown reason now, this has happened 3 times. We've had Kilson on the show that we have technical difficulties. So I'm going to blame this on Kilson. So Kilson, if you're watching, we blame you for today's technical difficulties. We hope that we heal from this very, very fast and get back to our working ways, so that we don't get called the unprofessionals or whatever.
Hey, now we got to stay true to our title. Come on. But you know what's going to happen now? He's going to watch this. He's going to hear that, and he's going to be on next week. Just out of the blue. He'll call you in the middle of the show.
Yeah, I'm coming.
That's
on
about
right
the cameras.
So with that, guys, say it again. Thanks for joining us. It was a pleasure sitting down with you and getting to know a bit more about Faceless and yourself. And we will see everybody next Friday. With that, take care, everyone.
Yeah, be safe,
guys.
everybody.
Everybody.